right, good morning, everyone. I thought it was going to be last, so that was a surprise, Jim. All right, so Alejandro and Milton have done a great job setting the stage. I always recommend to my clients, especially municipal ones, don't purchase your own chargers. Actually pick up the phone and call someone like Alejandro, because especially if you're using federal funds, you're going to own and have to maintain those chargers for 10, 20 years. What happens when level 4 comes out? So folks like Alejandro they actually have an incentive to keep improving their technology. So think about that as you are thinking about your own charging networks. Couple of ground stats to start. The transportation sector in the U.S. uses the plurality, about 29% of or produces for greenhouse gas emissions, and personal vehicles, it's hard to read these charts, account for more than half of that. So there's really an immediate opportunity if we can get our friends from Colorado to also change over to electric vehicles to make a little bit of change in addition to the other efforts for port electrification and everything else. So, great near-term opportunity for us. I think everybody knows that the onslaught of vehicles is going to continue. I'm pretty excited to see the Super Bowl this weekend and see if, again, every car manufacturer is promoting electric vehicles. We've even seen from a state level, California is going to ban new internal combustion engines or ICEs by 2035. The state of Washington followed suit. I think I saw that the state of Montana said they were going to phase out electric vehicles by 2035. I'm not sure if they were trying to troll the industry and pander to the oil and gas, but Wyoming, thank you. Thank you. But we're at a really transformative time from a funding perspective. Everybody, of course, knows about IJA and the bipartisan infrastructure law. So that's going to be providing some real money, $7.5 billion for electric vehicle charging throughout the country. There's two different pots of money that I'll go through. The first one is called the NEVI program, so that's the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, which is going to put out $5 billion, again, that's with a B, for essentially the highways. The really great thing about this is that while it covers 80% of eligible project costs, that can be either to public or to private. So it's not all going to public agencies. A public agency can contract an Alejandro to put in charging infrastructure. So that's a good thing that allows for flexibility in markets. And again, it doesn't require a DOT who has no experience owning and operating and maintaining electrical infrastructure to be able to contract that out as a service. The FHWA is going to distribute that through state federal funding formulas, and then the states have created all their own plans to determine how to use that. The other pot of money that's not on there, because you're probably wondering what happened to the other $2.5 billion, that is going into what's called a discretionary program. So that is actually the pot that's more interesting for me because that's how communities can use charging. The previous one is really going to help us build out what they call alternative fuel corridors. So think of highways, major county and state roads. The other part will go into competitive grants for communities. So areas that are already underserved can have the opportunity to provide access to charging where it doesn't exist today. This is a breakdown of how that funding is being distributed. Again, the blue is essentially what's going to go on the highways. And then the green are the discretionary grants that will go to community organizations. It's not all about cars, though. The legislature will also provide a pretty substantial amount of funding for public transit, and I assume also for the shipping industry, which is great. We need to continue to invest in all different modes, not just personal vehicles. So taking, buses, you think about large school bus fleets, you think about the Postal Service actually just made an announcement they're going to invest in electric vehicles for their fleet. And then, many people actually still do ride the bus in urban areas. So this could have a transformative impact in those areas that are already, fairly congested and have poor air quality outcomes. We'll not go through this whole chart. The important thing to know is that we've already had all the states complete their deployment plans. So you can, if you're not from Florida, you can look up your own state and see what the plans are. It has to be very transparent in how the money is being spent. We're at the stage right now where the grant programs and money is starting to be rolled out once the FHWA approved those state plans. So keep an eye in your state of what's going on for funding opportunities because it's better to have money than not have money. All right, I think most of us here are from Florida. If you're not aware, Florida is the second highest rate of EV ownership behind only California. Thanks to Alejandro and his compatriots, we do have a pretty good network already of existing charging facilities. I think probably also the second most in the country. And then we're eligible to receive almost $200 million of those NEVI highway funds over the next 5 years. So I think many of you that are on the fence about having range anxiety of your electric vehicle will soon have range confidence that you can get where you need to go and have adequate charging along the way. This is a copy of Florida's NEVI deployment plan. So if you're interested, take a look at this and see where you live in the state where they're programming charging. A lot of this was looking at gaps in the network and where you should fill those. But I want to point out the dark areas here on the map. So is anybody aware of Justice 40? Not yet. You'll hear about this a lot more. So this is an initiative, it's actually federal law, that requires essentially benefits to be provided in an equitable way to all communities. So as states are looking at the deployment of infrastructure, they want to make sure that those gray areas that are classified as disadvantaged communities are not left behind. So I'm an urban planner by trade. I happen to get into smart cities maybe by accident. So I always go back to kind of the needs of the people within the community and how we're going to arrange things from a land use perspective, how the transportation options all work together, what kind of businesses we're trying to support. And I think these are the things that you all in the audience and we all on this panel need to think about. So what kind of land use changes do we need to support this infrastructure? It was mentioned before that if you have all multifamily, that you're not likely to have a garage where you can put your own charger station in. So think about that from a land use perspective. I talked about equity and access to chargers as well. What kind of amenities do you want at your site? There's a great site that I take when I'm driving my Tesla up north in Lake City. It's in the back of a Waffle House. My family has gotten accustomed to going there. That my kids love the scrambled, covered, smothered. But for a while, we weren't sure if we wanted to go in there and use the bathroom. We're still building out the overall network, and the amenities at a site can make a big difference. Whether it's shade, a picnic table, because you're going to try and in these charging stops, you're going to try to eat your meals at that point. Not having a trash can at these sites is actually a big deal because then you have to either bring it all with you or unfortunately people will leave it behind, which isn't a great outcome. Think about how we can engage stakeholders in this process is of course important because it's the community's vision we need to implement. And then asset repositioning. What's going to happen with gas stations? What's going to happen with older malls? How can they actually provide better value for their customers is a question we want to help answer. So when we at VHB look at this, we look at kind of 3 different phases. So there's an overall needs assessment. So how does your community already function in terms of charging? Do you have available chargers or not? Are they located in the right places along major corridors or employers? So try to understand what you have already. Next part is stakeholder engagement. So actually talking to your community about their needs, what their vision is for electrification. There's going to be some communities that say we actually need more micromobility. So we need e-scooters, we need e-bikes because we're actually trying to shift modes away from personal automobiles. So understanding what those, the community purpose is very, very important. And then you get into the design recommendations. So you can look at things from a site-specific assessment. So I've selected a site. Here's the steps I need to take, whether it's choosing my equipment, coordinating with utility, deciding what kind of amenities and design I want to put on the site. Or you can do, if you're a large institutional user, what's the fleet assessment needs you can use to update your fleet. What's the return on investment, life cycle of your current system. These are all things that you and we can help to answer together. So a couple examples I'll walk through. We're working right now for Orange County, which you're sitting in today, on their electric vehicle and mobility hub. Orange County is about 3 million people, residents. Glenn and I are both residents. And we actually receive about 60 million visitors every year. And you can guess why with the theme parks, and you're all probably amongst them. So we are helping them to achieve one of their sustainability goals through planning for mobility and electric vehicle hubs. So we did a countywide analysis. Again, it's a pretty big place. City of Orlando proper is right in the middle, and then we're somewhere down here. So we wanted to map out all of the existing chargers, if it was level 2 or level 3, draw some buffers around them, so we could see within a 5-mile buffer or a 25-mile buffer, do we have adequate coverage for existing users? And then that helped us to identify the gaps. We ended up selecting, I think it was 10 different public sites, because this was a county project. They wanted all of the sites to be on county property, rather than trying to do any kind of joint venture or on a private site. Essentially, they wanted a very turnkey solution where they didn't have to ask permission from anybody else to use the land. So we tried to make sure they were distributed throughout the community based on some of that buffer mapping I showed you earlier. We also used what the county calls their access and opportunity map, which is a system that they use to map low-income housing needs and employment needs together, as well as disadvantaged communities. So again, we're trying to make sure that the access to charging is equitable throughout the area. So I'll walk you through one of our examples. This is the Meadowwoods Sunrail Station. So Sunrail is our commuter rail system that's about 80 some miles. We're expecting a connection to the airport very soon. This is obviously a large parking lot. The nuance here is that these sites are actually owned by DOT, but will be converted to some ownership in the very near future. They're not exactly sure if it's going to be Lynx, the local transit agency, that will end up operating Sunrail or not. That's still kind of up in the air. But we knew it was an important multimodal hub. And we knew we wanted to have something here because it would be kind of foolish not to utilize the existing resource and make sure we can service this as a regional site. So kind of like Alejandro mentioned, we do have a mix of level 2 and level 3 charging here. You would not want to use level 3 if you're getting on a train to go somewhere for the whole day, because your car will be done in 30 minutes. So that's why we wanted to have a combination of level 2 and level 3 and have that mix. So the level 3 will help pass through regional traffic. Level 2 will be for commuters that are going to be there for several hours. We did provide some capital costs, but again, we're not recommending to Orange County that they purchase anything. We want them to use those NEVI funds to either do a lease agreement or a charger as a services agreement, because if they purchase them, then they'll have to maintain them for 10 years, and we don't want them to be stuck with a bunch of level 2s when level 5 comes out, and because nobody will use it. I'm actually going to skip this one because I want to make sure we have time for everybody, but we're also working with some campus and institutional users to help them develop fleet transition plans so that they can, again, try to meet their own sustainability goals, as well as some of their, meet the demands of not really the students. The students don't own EVs, but their parents do and want to have them when they come to visit. I'll end with this one. This is in Richmond, Virginia, Dominion Energy, Clean Energy Park. Very cool redevelopment site. This is located downtown. The Dominion building is right here, and they've got solar shades over their parking spaces. And I didn't realize this at first, but it's in the Dominion logo, the way they designed it. They want this to be a very interpretive and educational site. So rather than hiding the transformers and the electric equipment, they're actually putting it out in the open so people can see how it's used. So in addition to the solar panels, they have a kind of environmental ethos of collecting rainwater that comes off of that, which is then reused in irrigation for the park. There are 29 charging spaces there, 3 different tenants. I'm not supposed to say which ones they are, but you can probably guess of the 3 big, or some of the more nationally known charging providers. Again, they didn't want it to be specific to one company, but show it how it could be a demonstration and kind of a lab for all different chargers to work together. And what I love about this is that it's not just a parking lot. It's an actual park that people can use in downtown Richmond, understand how renewable energy is used. I think they have a couple demonstration wind turbines on site as well, because they want to be a good steward of the environment and show how renewable energy can actually have a direct impact on people's lives and how they commute around. There's a park, an amphitheater, just a lot of different green space, which again, if you're used to charging at the Waffle House parking lot, will be a big difference. So some things I want to just close with. Most of us only drive 20 to 30 miles a day. So very easy to recharge either overnight or every couple days. Most of us are not driving hundreds of miles a day. So it's important to kind of put that in context. While I love having a car that has 330 miles of potential charge and never actually gets it because I have a heavy foot, most of us don't go that far every day. I mentioned make sure you consider the ground lease versus purchase. I would really think about a lease agreement or a service agreement with EVs. If any of you are in real estate, now's the time to think about whether you want to build EV capable or EV ready parking spaces rather than not do anything in your parking lots. So EV ready or EV capable means you put some conduit underground. You don't have to actually install the charger, but when you're ready to do that, you already have the underground infrastructure taken care of, and then you can have a company come and put the above ground equipment there. So if you're going to think about doing this, it's obviously much cheaper to do it ahead of time rather than to dig up and rebuild. So think about that because your customers and your residents and your clients are going to start demanding it as they see these Super Bowl ads for new EVs. Amenities are important. Nobody likes to sit in their car texting in bright sunlight. So think about how when I drive with my family and I want my kids to get out and run around a little bit, I don't want them running around just in a parking lot with broken glass. To have a park, maybe some tables, some playground equipment. Those can make a big factor in how people experience the journey. And then finally, start coordinating with your utility today. You probably have heard about supply chain issues. Transformers are backed up. I've heard anywhere between 18 months to 4 years. So it's not too early to start talking about how you can work with the supply side as you plan for your electric future. So with that, happy to answer questions at the end, and I'll turn it back over to Jim.
Thanks, Curt.